U.S. President Donald Trump and Democratic People's Republic of Korea leader Kim Jong-un are in Hanoi, the capital of Vietnam, finishing up the first day of their second summit. The two sides had a brief one-on-one conversation before having a dinner together, and they're expected to meet and have formal discussions on Thursday. Critics have considered their last summit in Singapore unproductive, although the tension on the Korean peninsula has visibly lessened. What new understanding might have been forged between the two leaders, and what to expect tomorrow? Meanwhile, Trump's former lawyer Michael Cohen is shortly going to give a lengthy testimony to the U.S. Congress, which will be carried live on TV. Will the Hanoi summit be successful in knocking the expected bombshell Cohen testimony from tomorrow's front pages? For more discussion on the subject, I'm joined from Florida by Dr. Eiland, Senior Fellow from the Independent Institute, and from London, Tat-Yan Kong, Associate Professor from the School of Oriental and African Studies at the University of London. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. Professor Eland, let me go to you first. How much do you think President Trump can focus on the summit when all eyes domestically are on Cohen's testimony? We're hearing keywords such as explosive, bombshell. I mean, how detrimental do you think Cohen's testimony could be for President Trump, and how much can he actually focus on the meeting that he's having at this moment?
Well, I think he'll be preoccupied staying up late at night watching the testimony, because that's just the way he is. His aides will probably try to send him to bed, but I doubt if he'll sleep, and I think he'll be watching it. So I think it is a distraction. Of course, these things are handled by aides, the negotiations and that sort of thing, but it will be a distraction, I think, for him.
How much do you think, however, that this kind of distraction will impact the outcome of the summit with Kim Jong-un, Dr. Eland?
Well, I think the summit will probably do what it's going to be doing, and I think that's just sort of a visual for the world. I'm not sure they're making much progress in getting rid of North Korea's nuclear weapons, which is the original purpose of it, because I don't think I agree with the U.S. intelligence community that North Korea is probably not going to get rid of its nuclear weapons, and in fact, Trump is reinforcing they're keeping their nuclear weapons, because that's how they got a summit with the leader of the free world, 2 summits now, and they're playing in the game on the international level at the very top level. So why would they want to give away their nuclear weapons? And of course, they also want them for their security, because they don't trust the United States after what happened to Saddam Hussein and Muammar Gaddafi. The second person there, Muammar Gaddafi, actually gave up his nuclear program, and look where he ended up. So there's both security reasons and prestige reasons, both domestically and internationally, why Kim probably won't give up these weapons. Then you may say incremental progress on other things, but no significant movement, I don't think.
Okay. Well, let me ask Professor Tat-Yan Kong's opinion here. The timing is really very much coincidental. I mean, almost immediately after President Trump came out of his dinner with the Chairman Kim, the testimony by Michael Cohen would be starting in just a moment's time. So, Professor Tat-Yan Kong, do you think this is an effort, or as a result, President Trump is going to deviate some attention from the many insider information that his former lawyer is going to reveal to the world? And do you think the expectation really cannot be very high for the second summit?
I'm sure that President Trump will be focusing on the hearings in the United States. But however, he also has a lot invested in this summit. You know, whether this summit will be able to distract from the Cohen testimony, I very much doubt it. I very much doubt it. However, you know, for President Trump, he finds he has domestic troubles at home. It is better to have a foreign policy success than not to have a foreign policy success. And if we go back to President Nixon's time, He became increasingly enmeshed in the Watergate scandal, but that didn't actually prevent the Nixon administration from building on Nixon's first visit to the United States. So I wouldn't write off the potentials for this summit. Yes, to China. So I wouldn't write off the potentials for this summit because of what's going on going on back home in the United States.
Maybe it actually even provide additional incentive for President Trump to try even harder to get a deal. Let's take a look at the short stakeout and what was said during that very short stakeout before this dinner. President Trump said it's an honor to meet Chairman Kim, and that he said the first summit was very successful, and he hoped that the second summit would at least be equally successful. And he said that both sides made a lot of progress, maybe a little bit of exaggeration there, but he said the biggest progress is that the relationship between the United States and the DPRK was really a good one. Dr. Eland, how do you look at the kind of humility that he has demonstrated in front of his DPRK counterpart, and his assessment that the relationship between the United States and the DPRK is really a new one and a good one?
Well, I support negotiations with North Korea. The question is, will they lead to anything, or you know, even a partial limiting of the North Korean nuclear program? I think not only the United States would benefit from that, but other powers around the area there would benefit from that as well. So if this line of negotiations ends up somewhere positive, but I just don't think it's going to be, if our goal, and what they say it is, they're defining the goal as the denuclearization of the North Korean peninsula. I really doubt that that's going to happen, but there may be some constructive from it. It's better than the threats that both countries were making to each other when Trump first took office. So I don't, you know, begrudge the president trying to negotiate. I think he's more concerned about a photo op, and I'm afraid the fear among U.S. His advisors is that because of this distraction at home, he's liable to get a distraction from the distraction. Mm-hmm. He's liable to give away too much, that is to say, end the Korean War, or you know, establish liaison offices and not get much in return. But I support him negotiating, but I think that North Korea also has to give up something as well.
What is the problem many people are having with the approach that President Trump has adopted, since which we see in the last summit he had with Kim? Basically, there was not one goal that he tried to accomplish, which is the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. Basically, the two sides have agreed to pursue 3 goals at least simultaneously, which is a new U.S. DPRK relationship, the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, and a peace regime on the Korean Peninsula. So again, Dr. Eland, why do you think so many people are so obsessed with the idea, with the seemingly stubbornness of the DPRK side not to give up their nuclear weapon, and ignoring the potential breakthrough that can be achieved on the other 2 fronts? Maybe, you know, you can break up the ice by knocking on some other places instead of the hardest part of the problem.
Well, I mean, you know, that's a good point. I think that certainly denuclearization may be too, at this point, may be too ambitious a goal. Perhaps some thaw and some confidence-building measures along the way would help eventually get there, or at least, if you can't get there, maybe limiting North Korea's nuclear program if you could get something verifiable. So, you know, I think they should probably take anything that they can get. The problem is, I think, from the U.S. standpoint, is that the president may be so concerned about changing the news story. He tends to focus on winning the day's news instead of the long-term situation in Korea.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
he may give away too much to bury the
The real issue. Yeah, Professor Tessian Kong, how do you look at this kind of concern that President Trump is really so interested in the optics that it's probably too easy to cave in to the demands of the DPRK side?
Well, that, I think they have to agree some principles, and then the principles have to be worked out in detail. I don't think too much has been conceded to the DPRK so far. The North Koreans have put some concrete measures on the table. They've suspended the testing of their nuclear weapons and also of their missiles. They have blown up their test site, and they've also closed their rocket engine testing site. Now, if they can achieve the closure of the Yongbyon plutonium processing facility, which has been the main source of plutonium for the North Korean nuclear program, this would be actually a major step to build upon. I think the key thing is we can't expect very, very rapid denuclearization because of the history of mistrust and North Korea's caution about the safety of its regime, but we can have gradual reciprocal actions.
Yeah.
We can have a sequence approach, building on what the North Koreans have put on the table so far. The next thing is to get inspectors on the ground to inspect the sites that the North Koreans claim to have closed, and in the meantime to have some easing of sanctions to permit inter-Korean economic cooperation.
The latest that come out of the United States is that 19 U.S. Democratic congressmen have released a resolution calling on President Trump to grasp this opportunity to achieve an end to the Korean War. And former U.S. President Jimmy Carter said he commended this important resolution that will help bring this nearly 70-year conflict to a close. He said that ending the threat of war is the only way to ensure true security for both the Korean and the American people. So, Professor Tessian Kong, why do these congressmen stress this part of the problem so much? And do you think President Trump is likely to follow their advice?
I think it's very, very encouraging that the Democrats who have recently captured the majority in the House of Representatives, that's at least 19 of them are supporting the peace initiative. And I think, looking at it from a long-term historical perspective, the U.S. has applied sanctions and coercion against North Korea for the last 70 years, and it hasn't worked. So, it seems to me the only way forward is to talk and negotiate with the North Koreans at a face-to-face level involving the top leaders.
All right.
The North Koreans will not give up their weapons, if they do not get some kind of security for their regime. That is the bottom line.
All right, we're going to leave it there. Eiland, Senior Fellow from the Independent Institute, and Professor Tessian Kong from the School of Oriental and African Studies in the University of London.